Welcome to the final module for our leadership class. This is Module 5, and during this 2-week period, we will wind up our course. I would like to take this opportunity to just review briefly what we've been reading and discussing online, and also to try to begin to bring it all together for you. In our Kouzes and Posner's book, we read about the Leadership Challenge. There were a listing of 5 practices, and the authors felt that applying these 5 practices would be a great way of actually taking good leadership and great leadership principles and putting them to work in the real world. So there were a number of stories here, and I think it does a really good job of taking theory and demonstrating how it can actually be used in practice. The 5 practices are model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, and of course, enable others to act and encourage the heart. Each of these is equally important from the author's standpoint. I think one of the things that I have found in today's world is that the challenge the process, the third practice, is especially important today in this rapidly changing, adaptive world that we find ourselves in, and I think has taken on even greater importance. Again, all 5 are important and they work together well. So I hope you've enjoyed reading through these, and especially some of the stories that were true and demonstrate that there are in fact excellent leaders out there. So let's bring this all together. We started out by asking, what is leadership? Who are these people that we consider to be exemplary leaders? We also looked at this through the eyes of the movies, and you were given a selection of movies to choose from and to take a look at. And I thought I would highlight some of the things from just 4 of those movies. And if you haven't seen them, I would highly recommend them. Also, on each slide, you'll notice down here at the bottom left corner, that I have a hot link where you can actually click on this and see the clip from the movie. So the first movie is from Invictus, which is a movie about Nelson Mandela, in which he states, "It is better to lead from behind and to put others in front, especially when you celebrate victory when nice things occur. You take the front line when there is danger. Then people will appreciate your leadership." And I do think that that speaks highly of many of the practices that we've been reading and talking about. I really love this scene from the movie Miracle, which is about a bid for the Olympic gold medal in hockey. Takes place a few decades ago when the U.S. was given absolutely no chance against the Russians. And this is Herb Brooks, the coach's speech, right before they go in to play the Russians. And I would read it to you, but I just don't do justice. I would really encourage you to click on this link and take a look at it. It's a really inspiring clip. And one of the things in these first 3 clips that you're going to see is that they really are about inspiring followers, about the ability to help others actually see the vision and believe in the vision. And this is critically important. The next one is from Hoosiers, and this is a movie, another sports movie that takes place in 1951. It's about basketball in Indiana, and it takes place in a very, very small town in the midst of Indiana, which is basketball country. The town itself is very tiny, and there are only something like 72 students in the entire high school. And it chronicles their saga of going with 7 players to compete in regional and statewide competitions. It's a heartwarming movie, and one that I think can be shared with your families and even your children. So take a look at this, and this particular clip also emphasizes team and the importance of working together. The last clip that I have for you is from the movie Remember the Titans. I especially like this because this really speaks to the model of the way, to leading by example. Because in this clip, at the very end, the phrase that sticks with us is attitude reflects leadership. In other words, The attitude of your followers will truly reflect the leader's behavior and the values of the leader and their actions. And I know it's an old worn phrase, but I truly do believe that actions speak louder than words. So don't just tell us what we should be doing or what you should do. Let's actually see it in action. A few quotes for you. I probably mentioned at the beginning of the course that I was originally a history major, so I often look to history for stories of leadership. This particular phrase comes from Harry S. Truman, who was U.S. president. He's also famous for the quote, "The buck stops here." His leadership quote is, "It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit." This also is another theme that we saw in our reading throughout the course. Again, another quote, "A dwarf standing on the shoulders of a giant may see farther than the giant himself." If we think about this, this is really a good metaphor for a follower and a leader, where leaders lift up followers. Many of you are familiar with Peter Drucker. He is a guru of both management and leadership. He's a prolific writer on the topic. A leader's job is to make people's strengths effective and their weaknesses irrelevant. I love this, and I think if we, instead of trying to continually pound people down and put them in jobs that they don't necessarily have the best talent and skills for, if we actually match them well to where they belong and encourage them to develop their strengths, our companies would be a lot stronger. So let's look at how we become a leader. As Kouzes and Posner say, you must first believe that you can actually learn to lead. As they say, that's where it all starts, with your belief in yourself and I think especially your belief in others. They really punctuate this with the idea that leadership is about self-development. So we are all works in process. Learning to lead is about discovering what you care about and value, and this is how their book starts out. Because you can't really convey your authenticity as a leader if you don't know what your values are and what you stand for. It's also important to move from a perspective of self to one of the collective. So I like to call it from the I to we. When I hear people who are managers talk about my employees, or I did this, or I did that, I just cringe inside because clearly they don't do everything by themselves. It really is a collective effort. And as we found out, leadership is about relationships. It is relational. So to become as effective as possible, you must improve your understanding of others and build your skills to mobilize people's energies toward higher purposes. To be a leader, you must be interpersonally competent and you must be able to develop the trust and respect of others. And this might bring the concept of emotional intelligence to the forefront, which is an idea and a concept that has become somewhat important in leadership skills. So you might want to take a look at that. Also, as we look at our own self-development, our movement from self to the we concept, it's important that we don't always believe our own press, that we manage this powerful thing that this power that's invested in us as leaders or managers. It is very easy to be seduced by power and importance. And I think one of the ways that we do that is we surround ourselves with people who feel safe and comfortable in questioning and challenging us. We also need to remember that humility is a great way to resolve conflicts and contradictions of power and self-importance. Humility is an area of leadership study that's become very popular and important and is emphasized today in this 21st century where we have a lot of failed leadership. And to bring things full circle, we definitely need to have principles. We need to know what we stand for. You can't lead others until you first led yourself through a struggle with opposing values. And once you clarify your principles, then you can begin the journey to authenticity and to transparency so that you can actually lead as a genuine leader. I love how Kouzes and Posner point out that a true leader isn't necessarily someone who flies in with a cape and an S printed on their chest. That they aren't larger than life. Leaders are human beings. And as they point out, we're not saints. We're full of flaws and failings. and we make mistakes. This is so important. It also means that each of us can learn to be better leaders. And they begin to end their journey in their book by stating that perhaps the best advice we can give all aspiring leaders is to remain humble and unassuming, to always remain open and full of wonder. Learning and continual improvement is very important, and also staying true to our values and who we are. So where do we start in becoming a better leader? If you think back in the book, this is the answer that Kouzes and Posner's give. Do you remember what it stands for? It stands for, It stands for do what you say you will do, right? It's very simple, boiled down. And they also point out that you can't command commitment, you have to inspire it. And this starts with leading by example, being authentic, being true to your values, and being other-centered. And in the final pages of their book, they move on to the concept of hope for a better future. When we think about it, leaders establish a vision, and they try to bring this vision alive and help others see it. And if we think about this is where we are today and this is where we want to be tomorrow, first of all, we're going to go through a change process. And that means that our tomorrow is a state that we believe to be better, and that we have hope in getting to this better state. So hope is essential for achieving the highest performance. It also enables people to transcend the difficulties of today and envision the potentialities of tomorrow. Hope enables people to find the will and the way to unleash greatness. And this is tied in with this concept of inspiration. And if you take a look at some of the movie clips and again reflect back on some of the stories that you've read in your reading this course, you'll see that this is a very important ingredient in leadership. Hope involves believing deeply, seeing further, thinking conditionally, and acting willfully to make things happen. Be vulnerable to possibility, let down your guard, and have the courage to believe in the power of hope. Leaders take risks. They take calculated risks, but they take risks. And being vulnerable is about taking the risk of trying and failing. It's also an important ingredient in trust. And it's important for leaders to be trustworthy. The best kept secret, according to Kouzes and Posner, of successful leaders is love, which is something odd I hadn't really thought of before I had first read this book. Staying in love with leading, with the people who do the work, with what their organizations produce, and with those who honor the organization by using its products and services. If we keep that in mind on a day-to-day basis, I think that is a good way to sort of keep us on the path. They finally conclude with leadership is not an affair of the head. Leadership is an affair of the heart. And if you think about it, it's not just about production and tasks. It's about motivating those around you to aspire to be better and do better, and that can lead to a greater organization and greater results. So in ending the course, I would like to ask you to reflect on what is your leadership philosophy. We all have different definitions, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the course, there are over 100 definitions that are accepted among the scholarly literature that are used in research. So leadership is one of those things that you know it when you see it, but it's a little hard to define it. So it is important for you to develop your own personal philosophy. I do have a few takeaways for you, and that is, first of all, leadership is not just about good work. It's not just about doing what's required. It's not just about doing a good job. It's taking things to a higher level and providing all of those things that we look at in the 5 practices. It is important to remain humble. Humility and vulnerability have become important aspects of our work in leadership, and we're finding more and more that these are key ingredients for exemplary leaders. Respect for others and encouragement of others is very important. Again, remember that we don't get things done by ourselves. We get them done through other people. And we want to inspire others. We also want to help others rise to be leaders themselves. And I would say, from reading your journals and your discussion posts and interacting with you in your papers, that you are not tomorrow's leaders. You are, in fact, today's leaders. At the very beginning, students always ask me, what is your definition of leadership? And so I always unveil it at the end. It's take it or leave it, but this is my personal definition. Leadership is a values-based influencing process in which leaders and followers collaborate to fulfill a shared vision or purpose. And as you can see, values are important. Some of you know I'm also an ethics instructor, and I believe that exemplary leadership includes ethical leadership. And I understand that it's about influencing others. It's about influencing others for a positive outcome. And I also believe that it's a community affair and that there is collaboration involved, and that it's not the leader dictating, but that this vision and purpose should be shared by the community that is being led. There is one definition that I will also share with you that was accepted globally by a group that has been doing a very long longitudinal study of organizational leadership. It's called GLOBE. It's organizational leadership around and organizational behavior effectiveness. And researchers around the world are developing more understanding of leadership globally and across cultures. And the definition that they decided upon is on the screen. You can imagine having many different scholars from around the world and lots of different cultures with different belief systems trying to come together, and yet they finally did. And this is the definition they have. The ability of an individual to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute toward the effectiveness and success of the organizations of which they are members. I want to leave you with a TED Talk that I strongly encourage you to watch. It's, first of all, it's very entertaining, extremely entertaining. Students love it. It's probably the one I get the best feedback on of all of the ones I share in my classes. It's also about positive leadership, and it's about happiness, and it's about, so I want you to take a look at it. And he's a researcher and a psychologist, and he has some great tips and actually done research on how to create a happier or a happiness factor in the workplace. And I think it dovetails very, very nicely with our work here in leadership. I want to thank you for a wonderful course and a great 10 weeks. I am in the process of returning your drafts to you. Some of you have already gotten them. And I look forward to reading your final papers and your final discussion posts. As always, don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions. Thank you, and enjoy this wonderful upcoming summer. And once again, congratulations, graduates.